educators, it's Jebeh Edmunds here, and I wanted to share with you a really great story called Follow the Drinking Gourd. It was written and illustrated by Jeanette Winter. Now, this is a classic. It's an oldie but a goodie. I've been teaching this in my classroom the last 16 years. I would say it's more appropriate for third grade and up because that's the time in our scope and sequence when students are starting to learn and reflect about the history of slavery in the United States. It talks about the ways of secret codes, the Underground Railroad, and how songs were used and actions were used from abolitionists and slaves to bring forth messages that was for their own safety to escape slavery. Story about following the drinking gourd. We all know that slaves like Harriet Tubman escaped by looking at the North Star in the Big Dipper, but the fact that they used the drinking gourd as that shape of the Big Dipper to have that as a route for them to look up in the sky, find the drinking gourd, and escape to freedom. The lyrics of Follow the Drinking Gourd is also included in this book. After you have read this book, I want you to use the companion lesson plan that I have created on my website, jebehedmunds.com, and use the retelling activity so students can further comprehend what they read, what they processed, and they can share with their people at home and their classmates of the importance of songs like this. This book has depicted the harsh realities of slavery in a way that is appropriate for elementary age students. It also shows abolitionists like Peg Leg Joe that was featured in the book and the ways and strategies that he used to help slaves escape for freedom. When you're reading books with topics about slavery and injustice when it comes to people of color, please, if you have a student that is identifying as a person of color or not identifying as a person of color, those students will naturally be uncomfortable because they see themselves represented in the story. Not per se the exact act, but the acts that are given towards the people that are in the book. I was that student growing up in the United States, in my classroom, with my peers, on the carpet or at my desk, and I always guarantee you, every year, my teacher would ask me flat out in front of the class, Jebeh, what do you think about that? How do you think the slaves felt? Are your family members slaves? Do you have ancestors that were slaves? And I would automatically get flustered. I'd have a panic in my eyes because if I was a third grader, fourth grader, fifth grader, even high schooler, I'm not an expert on slavery. And I felt like the teacher was expecting me to have more knowledge and more know-how of that subject. I want educators to understand that Black people, African immigrants, it is a hard subject, and we need to teach hard subjects, especially our history. We know it's hard. I always teach my students, I'm going to teach you some hard subjects in social studies today. It's a hard subject, but you know what? History is hard, and we're learning about hard things, so we don't what, class? And my class says, repeat it. But as that student, as that African student in the classroom, understanding and learning about slavery at the same rate and time as my peers, the last thing I wanted to have and feel was my teacher telling me, what is your opinion about slavery? What do you expect a student to feel about slavery? Any student to feel about slavery. So I would love for you teachers, when you are reading books that have depictions about slavery, that you are mindful, that you are sensitive, that if you're asking a question to the class, make it as a whole class. Don't call the student out. Don't call the child out. Even though, and you know in your heart of hearts that you don't have that as a cruel intention for that student, but to that student, it's a dangerous one. So please be mindful. I am showing you and sharing with you my pearls of wisdom and inspiration so that you don't make your student that looks like me feel uncomfortable. And also have that lens that that student that looks like me is also learning with students that don't look like them as well. So Although our history is harsh, and as the ones that were oppressed and marginalized was hard, we're talking about historical trauma. And historical trauma needs to be dealt with, explored, and also understood that when you are talking about subjects like this in the classroom, that child is also feeling welcome and in a safe place, and also understanding that my teacher's not going to call me out because I look like the people featured in the book. Let them share with you when they're ready. And if they're not ready, keep it moving and keep going with your lesson. I have other topics and discussions about that subject and more on my website, JebehEdmunds.com. Have a great day.